Welcome to episode 134 of SDGC for Thursday, January 17th. I wrote on my notes here January 17th, so I almost said 17th for a minute. Like it was.
Checks out.
I probably should have done that
That
anyway.
is a number.
If you're not aware, Super Deformed Gamescast meets every Thursday night right here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we discuss the latest gaming headlines with a wide variety of panel members and guests. We also do all kinds of other stuff as time allows, like a separate show about movies and television, community game streaming, and a mental health support show. If you've been along for the ride so far, welcome home. And if not, hey, feel free to stick around and maybe throw us a follow. Every single podcast is archived the next day on our YouTube channel for those who like to watch, and you can find us on SoundCloud and Google Podcasts for those who like to listen. We're on Spotify now too, actually. My name is John, and tonight, don't ever interrupt me again, Finn. Don't ever interrupt me again.
Gasp.
My name is John, and tonight I'm joined by Derek.
What's going on, everybody?
Finn.
It's me. Hello.
Zachary.
Hello.
Or as we like to call him, Smack Robertson.
Get out of here. Fuck off.
And a very special guest, Lucy O'Brien from IGN. Thank you so
Hi.
much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. This is very cool.
It's.
I especially like that I can see a cat in the background there.
Yeah, that's her.
Is there a cat in the background?
It's a
missed
good
the
kitty.
cat.
Yeah, that's my cat.
That's already
You
the
got
highlight of my
Going
day.
strong.
How is everybody doing tonight?
Alive.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I should probably
night.
have our chat up right here.
No.
No?
Unnecessary.
Chat is fine. The chat is fine.
Listen, Lucy, for people who don't know who you are, talk to us about your career, where people can find you, all that sort of stuff.
Give us your
Okay,
blurb.
I missed some of that, but so you want to know my career and all that
Yes.
sort of thing? Okay.
I want to know your career. Give me
My
your
career.
LinkedIn profile.
Give,
My
give us
LinkedIn profile.
give us the Lucy origin story.
Oh, okay. Lucy.
Oh, that's a
origin
good way of
story.
putting it.
All right. Well, in a nutshell, I used to work at New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand originally, and I used to work at New Zealand's equivalent of GameStop. And somewhere along the line, I started writing reviews and such like for a New Zealand-based website. And I don't know, it was back in the day where you could forge a career out of doing something like that. Like these days, I mean, with influencers and YouTube and that sort of thing, I mean, that kind of career path doesn't really happen, right? But it was very doable back in the day. And I basically just kind of worked my way up and did a whole bunch of different, like, disparate, crazy things. I wrote a car combat game that Greg Miller actually reviewed when he was at IGN. I was a co-writer on that. I think he gave it a 4, which I think is generous. So
Out of 5?
no.
Greg, I'm gonna have a talk with Greg about that.
Clearly,
No.
it was out of 4.
No, he was bang on. He was spot on with
Okay.
me.
Okay.
I spent a year in PR, working for an agency that looked after games. I don't know. I've kind of had a very strange career. I never really expected to be where I am today. But I started at IGN in 2012, working in the Sydney office. And I was there for 6 years. And yeah, it was only the beginning of December that I started in the San Francisco office. So that's kind of like my career in a nutshell, but there's so much more, but I don't want to bore anyone because it is like, it's boring. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Do you ever look around like just at the office at IGN and just think to yourself, how the hell, like, I love playing games. Like I've loved playing games my whole life. And now I'm here and I still don't quite know how it happened, or I'm still not, is it real? Like, do you ever still have those thoughts?
I mean, yes, but it's a combo for me because it's a combo of how am I here and also how am I here in the United States.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
a twofold thing. Like sometimes I'll just be at my desk and I'm like, am I dreaming? Like, am I dreaming that this is happening right now? Because it's still, I'm still so fresh, and it's still kind of, I'm going through a bit of culture shock.
Yeah.
I gotta tell
It could
you,
be
you
a
picked a
better
really
time.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you picked a really good time to come.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, the warmest
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah,
Sorry
it's-
about that.
Oh, look, everyone, I mean, I'm in California, which helps.
That's true. That does help.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel very removed, but also, need to sort of look around me and see what's going on with the state of the country. And sometimes I just, drink all that away.
There you go.
So
I
you
know
what's funny
nothing
is
about
that not to dime Lucia, but before we went live, she said, "Hey, are we going to do cameras?" Because I was going to have a glass of wine, and I was like, "No, bring the alcohol." Like
Yeah.
we all like, no, please. Like it's not a Thursday night if I'm
Yeah.
not
I mean,
drinking something on
How do
our,
you think
our
we
live
deal with
podcast.
being on this
Yeah,
podcast?
yeah.
Well,
This-
to be honest, it was mainly that I didn't want like to subject you all to my red wine teeth. But I just
Oh, no,
figured,
no.
I what the hell? Who cares?
No, go
So,
with it. I mean,
question for you.
Mm.
Do you ever, whenever IGN hires someone new, do you just like give them that knowing look? Like, I was once you, it'll be okay.
What?
What are
I
you
mean,
talking about?
What?
Yeah. I mean,
Finn?
it's
everything okay, buddy?
it's it is a lot to it's interesting because I started in a new office in a new country, but like at least I knew most of the people there.
Sure.
Yeah, and I knew the processes and the CMS and all that sort of stuff. So like I was a bit luckier. I still think it would be a very terrifying prospect just to start. Like you do get really thrown into the deep end, and there's a lot to learn, and there are a lot of processes to learn because we're not just we don't just write. It's video and social and Snapchat and all that sort of stuff. Like there's a lot to kind of wrap your head around. So yeah, I mean, I am the newest person in the office right now, and I'm sure that when someone else joins, I will give them that knowing look
Yeah.
and
Okay,
feel the
guys.
eyes.
I
So-
Oh no,
Go
Zach,
ahead,
please
John.
go ahead. No,
No,
please.
I was gonna drive us into a topic. Are you sure?
Oh no, I just wanted to hold on. Well, first let me make for sure my computer is not going to do an update right now because I definitely
That would be a bad
don't
time for
want
that.
I love it when that happens.
I definitely don't
Right in
want
the middle
that.
of a live
Okay,
show.
let's get rid of
That's
that.
great.
And let's get rid of because it popped up. It's like, hey, time to restart your computer for the update. I'm like, fucking absolutely not. This is literally the worst time you could possibly take the. So I'm like all freaking out. I wanted to just kind of raise a point that Lucy had made. When when you talk about how did I get here, and wow, am I really here? Like that's something that we're familiar with on this podcast as well. Because I mean, we've only been doing
And
this
we're still
for
baby mode even.
guys like 3.5 years, like which is not a lot when you compare to some other podcasts. And when we started this thing, I was mourning for a friend who had taken his own life, and I just wanted a group of guys to talk about video games with. And now here we are with you on our podcast, and we've been on Kind of Funny, and we're going to panels and conventions, and it's sometimes even now we all just kind of, especially me, just kind of sit around and take stock of everything that's happened and go, what the fuck happened? Like how did I
John-
get here? Like
John, this is the most wholesome humble brag I've heard in the first 10 minutes of a podcast. But I'm here for it, and I appreciate the sentiment.
I can start
I
talking about
guess.
how good looking I am if you want.
Okay, so
No.
our first
Let's
topic.
stick to
for it.
yeah.
Take us into the
Okay.
first topic.
Okay, so our first topic, guys. So there was a lot of news earlier this week that EA has kind of shaken the framing on, but Jason Schreier of Kotaku, who notoriously breaks very big stories, reported that EA's Vancouver studio, I believe it's the Vancouver studio, has shelved the version of the project they were working on that they took over from Amy Hennig last year, or actually 2017. And they're
2017.
actually, the original thing is that game has been totally canceled. EA has now come out and said, actually, we're just pivoting that to something that the game can kind of, I guess they're refocusing the game to be something different. Whether that's a cancellation or just a pivot is kind of up in the air, but we have seen, I believe, 2 games from EA in the 5 years that they've had the Disney Star Wars license.
That sounds about right.
Star Wars Battlefront, which is very successful. Star Wars Battlefront 2, which had problems. Does anybody have a take?
Was
on
that not successful as well? Battlefront 2? I thought
It
pretty successful.
struggled. It sold okay, but it did struggle. The PR in the week above its launch kind of shot
I
its
think
knees
if
out
you
from
look at
under it.
absolute numbers, it did well, but I think I don't remember if it fell short of their expectations. I know that player drop off was pretty severe, and of course, it ended up being the kind of focus of a major storm on like microtransactions and loot boxes,
that.
and then ended up they were like the center of that whole controversy.
Well, I mean, look at it this way: like, I'm a huge, massive Star Wars fanboy, and I never even played. I never even played Battlefront 2. I had no interest in it whatsoever.
I know you guys are only talking about AAA, but you have to give them credit. EA also did release Galaxy of Heroes.
That's true.
Mobile games that they, and I know
Yeah.
it's cold comfort, but they did release a bunch of mobile games. So
Mobile's an underrated part
Mobile's
of the market. I mean, I know that
legitimate
traditional
place.
gamers don't like to
Yeah.
think about it too much, but I mean, that's incredibly popular sphere of gaming, and it's absolutely valid.
So I actually have, so EA actually they released a statement about this, I think just the other day, and I'm actually going to quote an IGN article because we've got Lucy on.
Hey.
This is from Jonathan Dornbush, who, by the way, is a really cool guy. He's a super nice guy.
He's a lovely man.
He's a good guy. EA has officially commented on the reports that an open world Star Wars game has been canceled. In a statement provided to IGN, a representative for EA said, "The great work by our team in Vancouver continues and will evolve into future Star Wars content and games." The full statement reads, "There's been speculation overnight about one of our Star Wars projects. As a natural part of the creative process, the great work by our team in Vancouver continues and will evolve into future Star Wars content and games. We are fully committed to making more Star Wars games. We're very excited about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn, and we'll share more about our new projects when the time is right." EA did not concretely confirm or deny Project Orca's cancellation, but the statement seems to imply the work done so far will be possibly focused into new projects if indeed Orca has been canceled. So it seems like they're walking the language back a little bit. Or at least
they're definitely walking the language back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, people have definitely like lost their jobs over this. Like, it's not. It's that people like to use the word pivot.
Yeah.
And like it is a very in some way there may be some truth to that they're not throwing out everything, but it's not what we expected. It's going to be a whole brand new thing.
The problem is that in development terms, you don't just like pivot partway through development and decide it's going to be something different. Like, you start with your design document and you move from there. So when you want to make partway through, if this game was going out well to EA's expectations, you wouldn't be curveballing. Now, that isn't to say that the game was going poorly according to original plan. We really have no way of knowing at this point why this change happened. But if they're going to pivot in their terms, it's really not tremendously different from starting over. I mean, it's kind of almost, it's not quite a semantic battle at that point, but it's not as minor as EA wants you to believe that is from a development standpoint.
A lot, and based on nothing, because again, we don't know the true details of this, but it reminds me a lot of Fable Legends, where it was a game that kept getting retooled and pivoted to chase the latest trend. It was asynchronous multiplayer, then it was free to play, then it was always online scenario, and it kept changing its focus, and they never told us, and they just kept getting pushed back and retooled. And
there's another facet here that I don't think we've brought up, and the fact that isn't I could be wrong, but wasn't this Amy Hennig's game?
Well, so
was she working on this one?
So Amy. So my understanding was that this was the game that Amy was working on, that got shelved in October 2017, and then EA Vancouver took it over. And the idea was that the basically it was another pivot, and that similar assets were going to be put forward to this new project. So, in theory, based on EA's wording, this will be the second, or I guess the third project that's going to be using the same assets that Amy Hennig's team was in theory working on.
So bad for Amy at this point. Like, I mean,
there's a lot, there's a lot of people's names that we don't know who have been grinding on the team for a lot of years.
That's a great point.
And
so,
one, can I just say one quick thing?
No, please go ahead.
And Lucy made a good point, which is like there are jobs being lost, and EA made a point where they're like, well, no one's been laid off from EA Vancouver, which is true. But one word that you said, Orca size, which was the project name for the game, Walt, I think his name's Walt Williams, who wrote Spec Ops: The Line and then worked with Mitch Dyer on Star Wars Battlefront 2, recently tweeted, "I have an Orca-sized hole in my timetable. So if anyone has any writing gigs for me, let me know."
Man.
Yeah. So
I mean, he would have been contracting,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
people may not have been laid off, but everything is
Contracts may not have
completely.
been
People
when
felt
you
it.
do the new project.
Yeah, it's a massive change.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's such a difficult thing to say because like we don't know the inner workings. We don't know I don't know the insights of mismanagement. I don't know
Sure.
where it feels to me like a perfect storm of just like screw ups and I don't want to like completely blame EA because again I don't know the facts. But it hasn't worked out. That having the license has not worked out so well for them.
Right.
But also the fact that Disney and Star Wars, it's so difficult. It's like suddenly being in charge of Nintendo if you're not Nintendo.
Well, and
Yeah.
you know what?
And having to ask and having to sort of the world has to be a certain way and therefore you're really constrained. And I can only imagine how difficult it is to work within those constraints.
That honestly makes me wonder if Disney isn't playing a role in this
Oh,
somehow.
of course,
Oh,
I mean,
they
a massive
yeah.
so
Yeah.
and I find it very interesting because I had a thought hit me the other day. It's that we're not just seeing problems with Star Wars titles get out the door. We're seeing problems with Marvel properties get out the door as well. And these are both Star Wars owned, or these are both Star Wars. These are both Disney owned IPs. There was a lot of talk at the Game Awards about the fact that we didn't see the Avengers game that Square Enix is supposedly working on.
And Crystal Dynamics too.
And Crystal Dynamics. So like I'm wondering if this is more of a Disney problem than it is a developer problem.
Actually, Lucy, do you have anything to start off with before I
No,
jump
I mean,
in? I didn't want to
no,
cut you
no.
off.
I mean, I'm just gonna say I think it's just a really complicated, messy soup of both.
It's so confusing because it's Star Wars. It's one of the biggest intellectual properties on the planet, and you would think that I'll use the language I used before we went live. This should be the surest of all sure things. Like it's Star Wars. Like I mean, but for whatever reason, and I don't even these titles just can't get out. No, I don't want to update my computer. Stop it.
And John, and that's why Disney probably is a much bigger factor than most people. Like everyone on the internet loves to just play the blame EA game. But as someone who has worked with IP owners before, they are extremely particular. To give just one brief example without saying who, at one point a bunch of official assets that we worked on had to be scrapped because a period and a space were not in the right place of the copyright. So, and that scrapped like 3 weeks of work. So then you take that, and that's a comparatively small thing, and you put Disney with their baby of Star Wars into the mix, and there's no such thing as just it's passable.
Right.
EA is not in an enviable position because they also want to make their games as profitable as possible, but then you put on Disney's expectations, and I guarantee you a very healthy dose of hand-holding.
Oh,
it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Well, I simply do not envy any developer who is working under the EA umbrella and also working with LucasArts, right? Like
that's a double whammy.
I mean, well, and I don't mean it because Disney is difficult or because EA is difficult, but it's just this idea of you're having two people stand over you with things that are crucially important to them, and the creative side of being a developer of creating assets and using those assets now has to go through two sets of partners, which just makes the work really long.
There's a chain of command to get anything approved that then you have to factor that into everything.
And in the game
actually,
go ahead, Lucy.
I'm just going to quickly interrupt. There's actually a quote that Jason Schreier got, which I've just brought up now, from an ex-Visceral developer talking about the Lucasfilm approval process. So this is back in 2017 that he got this quote. And it's exactly what you guys are saying. With Star Wars, you could be talking months, potentially years. Oh, would protagonist really look like this? What would his weapon look like? Potentially years of that. Would he carry this? Would that really work in the Star Wars universe? With Uncharted, they can build any world they come up with because it's their world. With Star Wars, you have to have that back and forth. And people think, oh, it must be so cool to work on Star Wars. It actually kind of sucks. That's the quote. And of course it does. I mean, it would be agony. And I think a lot of people sort of do assume, oh, it's Star Wars. It's a no-brainer. It's a slam dunk. And it's like, no, my God, imagine the approvals that you have to go through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, like there's a reason. Like so the big backlash behind Battlefront 2 is that a lot of their progression was locked behind loot boxes rather than cosmetics,
Christ,
which is
I
what people
remember that.
prefer. Which is what people prefer. And I get you. Progression locked behind a paywall sucks. But also the idea of sitting with EA and coming up with hundreds of customization unlocks that all meet the requirement would take forever. And in a games as a service era, that might just not be a feasible thing. And I think that's maybe what we're seeing EA and in that case DICE contend with.
I think this is almost a good example of why you've seen licensed properties in general, but especially like big licensed games become so much more rare over the past couple of console generations, because this sort of stuff was ubiquitous during the like the PS2 era, and then you move on and it kind of dropped back a bit, and it's pretty rare to see major games that are tied to a big comic or movie or show property compared to before. And I think that this is a good example of that.
Dragon Ball Fighters was a journey.
So let me ask you guys this, and I want to throw the question to Lucy first. Should we be concerned about Respawn's Star Wars game, Fallen Jedi, or I think it's called? Because it almost seems to me like this IP's cursed at this point.
I feel that EA has at least got some confidence in it, considering it was brought up in that response, in that public. And I think that if it wasn't at least going to plan, it wouldn't be mentioned in that statement. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like it is right now. At least I feel like it's the one big hope. It's
it's a new hope.
EA is putting it's a new hope.
It's a new, don't ever do that again, Finn.
EA is betting a lot on this and placing a lot of faith in this project, and I mean that's my take. If it was completely crumbling from the inside, it wouldn't have been included in that statement.
Yeah, go ahead, Finn.
I was just gonna say my only fear for it is I worry that either A, it gets delayed from their projected holiday 2019 title, or B, that they're so worried that the negativity of a delay that they force it out and then it's rushed state, it suffers.
So I've got something to address the first thing. One, so we saw them commit to this fall 2019 date at E3. Mm-hmm. We're now more than 6 months later and they're still committing to that. And they name drop Respawn's game explicitly. Like I don't listen, it could get delayed, but I would say that 6 months after E3, less than 12 months from a game's launch, them coming out and explicitly saying this is our launch date is a good sign, especially from especially from EA. But then again, as soon as I said that, I'm like, wait, they delayed Battlefield like 5 weeks before it launched.
Yeah,
supposedly.
that's
so
good. I was gonna
now I feel a little weird about it, but I still want to say they're confident because Respawn hasn't released a bad game yet, which again, fingers crossed that can.
I guess it comes down to they haven't shown anything from it yet. So an EA is not Bethesda or Ubisoft that usually has a smaller dev cycle in the sense of like here's the announcement, here's the release. So who knows?
But I don't know. I need this game to be good because Titanfall 2, for my money, is probably the best first-person shooter this generation. That's just my opinion.
It's up there.
Titanfall 2 was magical.
Titanfall 2 was fucking.
Good.
Yes.
Oh God! Like
so good.
It was. I mean, I think if it doesn't have the best single-player first-person shooter campaign this generation, it's in the top 3.
Well, it's up there with Wolfenstein 2 in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree.
Now EA hears you, but have you considered Battlefield 1, which launched just a mere 10 days later? They're just again, EA is not to blame for this Star Wars debacle, but they goddamn buried Titanfall 2.
Yeah. So which is weird because Titanfall 2 is such a better game than Battlefield.
It's a banger. It's a good game.
It's just, so I guess here's my thing, right? Actually, you know what? I want to point out something that Sam said in chat. Sam Tolbert, our friend Sam Tolbert, he said, when I talked to Drew Karpyshyn, am I pronouncing that right? Drew Karpyshyn last year, he said one of them, Karpyshyn, He said one of the main reasons KOTOR was able to succeed was because timeline-wise, it was so far removed from everything else Star Wars, and they had creative freedom, which kind of ties back to what we were talking about with Disney being in charge of the Star Wars IP now. Them owning the OP. I think that's a great point from Sam, and I think being an open world Star Wars game, I am sure if you're trying to fit that into Star Wars canon,
That's so fucking hard.
is probably really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was an open world game, correct? Like this was supposed to be a.
It was supposedly going to be open world. Yeah. Before we moved to it would have been so good. I know, but I mean, like, listen, it could have been a pay involved. Listen, before we go to the next topic, Derek, you've been a little bit quiet. You got anything, buddy?
Not that hasn't already been covered. Y'all got it.
Derek's a man of few. He's a man of few words, but when he speaks up, we all pay attention.
I had my bit about development earlier, and that was where I could chime in. As somebody who's been involved in some indie development, so that's what I got.
Quick, Zach, before you go on, I just want to point out the most amazing thing happened. I picked up my bourbon, and my copy of Kirby Planet Robobot fell off my desk and right into a full cup of coffee on the floor. So that's cool.
Oh wow!
When do you have a full cup of coffee on the floor?
You acted so chill about that.
I kind of wanted to scream a little bit because I love Kirby, but
he loves you back,
whatever.
John.
There's nothing I can do. Whatever. Anyway, Zach, please continue. I just wanted to point that out.
Listen, so we've talked about troubled developments, and we've talked about potential repercussions of canceled games, and maybe layoffs that come with that. So maybe it's a good time to talk about increasing unionization efforts across the game industry. Predominantly, we've seen the most success in the UK and in Europe, but I think that sentiment is starting to spread. Does anybody have a particularly strong point they want to make about increasing unionization in the industry?
So I actually Kotaku and specifically Jason Schreier, who's great. He put out an article about this very thing on March 22nd last year, and I just want to quote his article real quick. I've got it pulled up here. He said, in a small room yesterday inside the massive Moscone Center meeting complex, roughly 200 people crowded around a large table to conduct a challenging conversation about working in the video game industry. There was a single microphone chauffeured from person to person by a sprinting staffer working the Game Developers Conference, which is running in town all week. Most people began talking before the mic got to them. Raucous banging, presumably from construction nearby, drowned out many attendees' comments. Despite the din, the buzz in the room was apparent. People were ready for change. They were there for a roundtable led and moderated by the International Game Developer Association's Jen McLean, titled Union Now, Pros, Cons, and Consequences of Unionization. Over the course of an hour, only one person in the room mentioned the cons and consequences, McLean. As the microphone moved from speaker to speaker, the room heard argument after argument in favor of unionization. Every single one was met with applause. One person talked about unions putting an end to exploitative internship programs. Another said they expected a union would protect marginalized members of the community. And I'll skip to the last paragraph here, and I think Jason hits the nail on the head. He said, to not take action means accepting the status quo. To accept the status quo means being fine with brutal, unpaid overtime, systematic layoff cycles, and other well-documented industry abuses. In my reporting over the years, both for Kotaku and my recent book, I found it impossible to meet a game developer without a work-related horror story. And he's right. Yeah. He's 100% right.
I don't have the exact stats on hand and can't pull them up at the moment anyway since I'm running the stream, but isn't it something like the average programmer in game development makes it through an average of 3 projects before they leave the industry entirely?
Something like that, yeah.
It's something like that. Burnout is brutal. Before we get too far into this topic, I want to clear up one misconception that I frustratingly continue to see on this topic in personal conversations, online, on message boards, in articles, and that is the idea that people have this idea that increasing work hours per week has a linear scale in terms of productivity. People say, oh, well, the game's got to get done, so you have to work 80 hours per week on Red Dead Redemption 2. And the simple fact of the matter is it's well and observable that worker productivity drops off a cliff when you have them work long hours for extended periods of time. Occasional weeks of overtime doesn't really cause that, but long-term burnout causes people to spend less time on the clock actually performing work functions, and when they do work, they're a lot more error-prone and take longer to correct mistakes.
That's a really good point.
They're burned out. A team working 80 hours per week gets less total work done than the same team working 40 hours per week. Making people work more for extended periods of time is actually counterproductive, and the industry keeps doing that. And there's a lot of industries that most industries have learned that lesson, and it's really frustrating to see that game development has not. And the other side of that is when you have so much burnout, you keep no experience. When your average person works for 3 games and then ditches to go into much better paid, much better working conditions, general software development outside the gaming industry, you've got nobody with the experience to become project leads. You've got people who don't have the required experience to foresee mistakes and not make them at all, or correct them when they come up, which goes back directly into productivity. It takes more time and more paid hours to get these games done. So the idea that gamers come up with that this is a necessary evil, these long working hours and this burnout is actually counterproductive to getting your favorite games done on time and in good quality. So let's clear that conversation up right now, because it's a complete non-starter.
Yeah, Lucy, do you have anything?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I mean, I am very pro unionization. I think that we've all heard the horror stories. We all know that there is a culture in the video game industry that encourages crunch and encourages, and in tech in general, like not just the games industry, I suppose, like all across the board. I mean, you look at Elon Musk and some of the comments that he's made about, you know, about a sort of 40-hour working week being completely unfeasible for what they do at Tesla. The whole culture needs to be completely shifted, and unionization has absolutely worked in other areas. Like you think about film and television, for example, like it's that the SAG, what is it? It's called
SAG-AFTRA.
SAG-AFTRA. Exactly. I mean, has been such a massive force, such a massive force in that industry, and it seems crazy to me that video games, which earn more money than film as a general rule, it's a massively profitable industry, that there is no unionization, and that we still have this weird culture of just, okay, yeah, working 100-hour weeks is just what you have to do, and you need to be happy to be here because you are blessed. You know, like I think that is also something that we see a lot. Once you're in the video game industry, people are expected to feel grateful that they're in there, that they're in the industry, and therefore, if they're not grateful, you know, people need to know that they need to know that there are 100 people lining outside the door. Not even 100, like 1,000 people outside the door that could take that job. And it's like it's this terrible pressure on game developers, and it's just it's a kind of horrific scenario, and things need to change. That's my take.
You know, I think there's multiple culprits here, right? Like obviously, like we all remember the story about Rockstar and their 100+ hour work weeks, crunching on Red Dead. Yeah, that was a hell of a thing. And by the way, I just want to state up front that I'm of the position that, give me the choice. I don't care what game it is. I don't care if it's an Octopath Traveler style remake of Final Fantasy VI. I'll throw that out there. If it is keeping people from spending time with their families and their children, I don't want the game.
Yeah. I
don't want the game. I'm a family man, and I know what it's like to be kept from your family, and I don't want that for anyone. Nobody should want that for anyone. Like I was saying, there's multiple culprits here. One, obviously, is just the state of the grind itself in the game's development cycle. You know, like there are studios that can get this done without the grind. I think just today I saw a story about the developer of Slime Rancher. I apologize, I forget who they are, but
from Patrick Klepek of Waypoint.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Insomniac has come out and stated that they did not crunch on Spider-Man. Like, and that game is amazing.
Yeah.
And the game is fucking awesome. And there was no crunch involved in that game. The other side, like the flip side of the coin, I don't know if you guys saw the responses from gamers to that Red Dead Redemption 2 story. but they were all about, hey, you know what? You got to sacrifice your home life for the game, baby. You got to sacrifice your family for your job. It's important, baby. You got to give us some cowboys. Like a massive swath of the gaming audience itself, in my personal opinion, is driving a lot of this. And people say that, gamers don't have, like it doesn't matter what they think, but it does. It does at a high level. And Rockstar, like companies like Rockstar, I'm not just going to single them out. Like a lot of developers, and publishers, they see the fervor with which their consumer base wants these titles. They want them as quickly as possible, and they will do what these are corporations, and they will do what they need to do, most of them anyway, in order to get those games out in what I consider to be a timely manner. And I'm all about unions. I think this is something that the industry has needed. We needed this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can't fucking believe that we're still not here. Like we're in 2019. We just had a story about Red Dead Redemption 2, literally people sleeping in their offices for months. Like it was months, right? They were doing that whole
it was not a short amount of time.
Upwards of 6 months. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And here's how I put it. So I didn't work those hours when I was at war. When I was in Afghanistan, I was part of a quick reaction force. Like during my time in the QRF, when literally we would fall asleep on the, in our clothes, in our battle rattle on our racks, because, quick reaction force, if there's an IED or there's an ambush and you support your fellow Marines, you got to get up, you got to go. You're the quick reaction force, right? I didn't spend as much time on duty in a fucking war zone as those developers did putting together a fucking video game. And that is unsaid. And as much as I love this industry, something has to give, something has to change, because
I think you make a strong point about the fact that gaming audiences broadly defend the practice. And that's not really, I don't want to put that as like, oh, you go ahead, Zach. Yeah.
No, like I just want to build on what you're saying, because I think we're heading towards the same direction. But like, one thing that I think has led this, and listen, like there are unionization efforts happening that are very successful and happening in other places in the world that are very successful. But I think a big hurdle is that the United States, especially in the last 20, 30 years, but it goes back further than that, has had successful right-wing campaigns that are anti-union, that tell people who are laborers, who are working hard, that the reason things aren't getting done, the reason they're not happy, the reason their wages aren't there is because of their fellow worker and not because of the people at the top. And we've seen states in the Midwest and other places in the United States that will pass anti-union legislation. They will vote for things that are against their best interest because they're tricked into doing it. And I think that culture of anti-unions has seeped into the video game industry. And like you said, when you couple that with extreme fandom where people want the next Star Wars game as soon as possible, or the next Red Dead game because it's been 8 years and I can't wait to go on Yeehaw 2, people get into this weird space where they just demand it. And it's frustrating because we've seen things where people have done it right. Like you're just referencing that Simon Rancher thing, which is something I took notes about that I wanted to reference. But also you see things like Dead Cells, which came out of a French studio that I had to write this word down because I would forget it, but they're based on a anarcho-syndicalism where everyone, there are no job tiers and everyone is paid the same, whether you've been there since a founder or you've been there for a few months. And you contrast that against...
that was the Dead Cells people.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but you contrast that against people like Rockstar, where if you've worked on Red Dead for 5 years, but you can't do that last year, they won't even put your fucking name in the credits, and we're okay with that. We're fine with that.
Wait, hold on. What?
Yeah, you remember that, John?
No, I don't remember that. What the fuck is that?
Yeah. There's a huge part in the Rockstar story where, like, if you don't finish the game, if you are not there the day it ships, your name doesn't go in the credits, which is particularly problematic because you have no way to technically prove that you worked there.
How is that even fucking legal? Like,
it's legal. It's fucked, but it's legal.
Well, United States, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that
Christ.
I think that at its core, we will not see. We're at this weird juxtaposition, and I'm being kind of verbose. I'll wrap it up. But we're at this weird juxtaposition where we have this weird anti-EA like whiplash to any new game they announce, but then we're also on the side where we're like, these developers really need to get this game out on time, and it's just this weird. I guess it's just capitalism. I think it's just fucked, guys. I think we should scrap it and start over.
You're completely right. It's capitalism. One thing that I want to highlight is so. John, that piece that you were referencing from Jason last year, that came out of GDC last year, and that was when I was there at GDC. I wasn't in that particular meeting, but I was there, and I really felt that sort of simmering unrest. And that meeting, by all accounts, was an absolute disaster.
Really?
And Jen McLean, she's a friend of mine. She's, she wanted to have the conversation, and I appreciate that she opened the floor up to having that conversation. I mean, I am pro-union. She has questions around it, and that's her prerogative. But this year, this is what's going to be really interesting, because we're heading into GDC in March, and the conversation around unionization has only got more intense. And so I feel like in March, we're going to see that conversation just completely explode. So I think this year's GDC is more interesting. Is more interesting than last year. It's a fascinating time to sort of be witnessing this conversation. And yeah, I think that we're going to see a lot of stuff coming out of there.
Yeah.
So I guess I've got two questions, one for everybody and then one for in particular. One, the question for everybody is, has anybody noticed that you can't say the word unionization without sounding drunk?
I feel like I'm drunk. Like I'm trying to say
it's tough.
Because I like, but also it's like unionization.
It helps if you speak it with a very strong Southern drawl. Unionization.
You just gotta like cut some of the vowels out.
I mean,
if you just break out your foghorn leghorn and you talk about unionization, then it turns out fine.
Kentucky Derek is out.
Why do you guys keep mispronouncing unionization?
I don't know. Like I'm sitting here
because
like,
I'm pretty sure the chemists.
I'm like, I haven't had that much fucking bourbon yet. I'm like, so when we're talking about unionization, like I can't fucking say
John,
that word.
You're drunk.
The what am I not drunk on this podcast? But the other question I had for Lucy was, so this year, what do you think is the way forward with this? Because it's good. Like it's really heartening to hear that this is something that's going to get addressed even further at GDC. But what is the next step? Because I can't imagine that a lot of publishers are going to be too happy about the prospect of unionization. I don't know. I feel like there's going to be some significant pushback to this, and I wanted to see what you thought.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether this is going to be the year that everything explodes and we're going to see it all happen. But I do think we're going to see a more organized, united effort to making it happen. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch from the outside. I just, this year of all years, I feel like the conversation is just right up there. It's at its peak. And the more people who come together and sort of vocalize this as one, the more it could become a reality. It's just, it's really interesting watching it from the outside. And last year's GDC unionization meeting was such a clusterfuck. It's just gonna be so, I think, quite inspiring to see what this year's conversations bring.
Right.
You know what's interesting is that our good friend Steve Blomkamp in chat, he says they do the same thing regarding removal from credits in film. It's a systemic issue across all creative industries. And he would know, for anybody in chat who doesn't know, Steve is actually the cousin of Neil. So Steve, it's actually super good to see you, man.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to have Steve.
I've missed having Steve in chat.
And also congrats to Steve, because he just announced today he is taking a short break of time after leaving his development studio, who makes The Gallery, I believe, are the series of games he worked on, or I
believe so, yes.
Yeah, so shout out to him for taking some time for himself to kind of recoup and
watch out. We're talking about what a friend Steve is to the podcast, and we're sitting here probably fucking up the name of his shit.
Steve, we're trying our best.
It's that thing he does for that thing.
Working in the industry and working really hard so we can all. So listen, we've had some downer topics, and I think we're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
This
drive it into the ground.
I'm so sorry.
There's not a lot of good news this last week.
Yeah, it's been tough. Okay, so listen.
What's next?
Mortal Kombat 11
That's weird. Mortal Kombat 11 looks great, Zach. What could possibly have gone wrong?
So listen. Mortal Kombat had its reveal event today, and the combat looks slowed down, pulled back, and decidedly gross as usual. But
it's itchy and scratchy, the video game, basically.
Yeah, I don't like it. It makes me nervous.
Right.
But it also has drawn some heat from smaller sections of the internet around the casting of Ronda Rousey as which character from Mortal Kombat?
Sonya Blade,
Sonya
who's one of the
Blade.
classic.
Sonya Blade.
She's been a character since the original game.
She is a classic.
All of the actors and voice actors have jumped around from game to game.
Sure.
It is kind of weird to have like a celebrity or pseudo celebrity portrayal for one of the main characters.
Yeah.
Outside of.
Yeah. Zach, who is that celebrity?
So Ronda Rousey is I forget which weight class she's considered, but she used to be UFC, and then
I thought it was bantamweight. I might be wrong.
Bantamweight? Is it bantamweight? Okay.
She used to be UFC, and I think she has now since pivoted to WWE.
Wrestling. She does the WWE.
Yeah,
I don't
she
watch
does
wrestling, but yeah.
Yeah, so she has since pivoted then, since she had a couple rough fights where she it seemed like her time at the top had ended, and so she's kind of departed to the entertainment part of wrestling, which, listen, no heat against the entertainment part of wrestling, but there are genuine reasons to be upset about Ronda Rousey, including some transphobic comments about her around wrestling and fighting in general. Also reports of domestic abuse. And then
not just reports, she proudly talked about it in her own words. Which, to be, I mean, like, the guy was being skeezy, but she
absolutely
basically responded in such a disproportionately violent manner that it is extremely reminiscent of domestic abuse, where it's somebody who's basically been holding that in and looking for an excuse to let it out. And she spoke with some pride about what she did to this guy.
And then Zach, there was the
Sandy Hook denial.
Truther.
Yeah. So
I didn't know about this until today.
So for those who don't know, and
I
listen,
did not know about this until today.
And so I've got two comments. One, I'll contextualize it, and then I'll make. A while back, she retweeted a conspiracy theorist's video about how the Sandy Hook shooting could have been faked. For those who don't know, that was the shooting in the United States that left dozens of
children,
4, 5, and 6-year-olds dead, and also some educators as well.
To clarify, the video explicitly said that they had the evidence to prove that.
Not only that, but I know family. I know family.
It wasn't here's maybe
family members who were there, who literally lost family members. So
right, and so she said that the conspiracy very interesting and quote, a must watch, which is problematic to say the least. And listen, so I've seen some people on Twitter, and I think understandably so. They've said, well, today is my first day of learning about this. How can a studio like NetherRealm be held responsible for this? And I understand that, but I just want to quickly make a point. That these claims, one, going back on Ronda Rousey, have gone back to 2015, a lot of years. But also, when you are a studio who's running a multi-million-dollar intellectual property and you're looking to make synergy with other people in the fighting space with fighting enthusiasts, you do your fucking research.
So,
well, not only do you do your fucking research, but you be sensitive to the fact that you own a very violent intellectual property,
well,
and therefore you've got to be cautious in that space. Like I love Mortal Kombat. I do. I love the gore and the it's so over the top.
Yeah.
But I also the fact that this domestic abuse stuff and transphobia and it just brings us. It turns it from something that is fun and something I can accept into something like come on, get a better PR person.
Yeah. This is very off-brand for NetherRealm. So I was never a big fan of Mortal Kombat. I always thought it was kind of... I didn't think it was a very good fighting game, because they weren't very good fighting games.
It wasn't until like Mortal Kombat 9, and then it got a lot technical.
Midway went under, Warner Brothers bought out the license and the team, and they became NetherRealm proper as we know them today. And that is... The Mortal Kombat 9, the reboot, is when it became a much more serious, good fighting game. And they also started to take themselves and the property a lot more seriously. They've put more effort into the story. They put more effort into taking it seriously in terms of characterization. I still think that, weirdly enough, this franchise that started very much, you could argue, appropriating Asian culture, really turned into maybe one of the best examples of like a broad and varied like Asian cast, there's a ton of Asian main characters who are portrayed well outside stereotypes. I mean, Liu Kang in the reboot games being this very confident kind of like, flirty, like that's not, you don't usually see, Asian men are usually emasculated in Western media. So it's, they're very positive in a lot of those ways. And the reboot was not great when, like, they still did that video game industry thing where women were very overly sexualized in a lot of regards. But they listened, they seem to have listened to a lot of that because starting with Injustice and then moving into like Mortal Kombat X and Injustice 2, they did a lot better. There's still ways to go, but they have definitely tried to build an image of themselves up as being a bit more serious. And Ed Boon is by all accounts a joy of a man. He seems very friendly and open-minded, and he seems like this is very off-brand for NetherRealm to have done this. So it's like, did they not do their research, which is incredibly careless, or did they go, well, maybe people won't care, which is a stupid decision to make because in this era they would know.
I agree. So wrestling is one thing, right? Like I genuinely think that, like, for example, like Vince McMahon, we all know what kind of, like, I don't know wrestling, and I know Vince McMahon is, he's got his thing going on, but he I'm sure he knows he probably doesn't care because Ronda Rousey brings in a ton of money, right? It's somebody like an Ed Boon, on the other hand, who I have heard from many people is just a gem of a person. I'm willing to bet. I agree with Lucy. I think it's the former. I think this is just because, I mean, I had no fucking, Lucy didn't know about this until today. Like, I had no idea. So
Kasu brings up the Devil May Cry 5 Dante's theme being sung by the lead singer of Suicide Silence, who had sexual assault against a minor. Correct me if I'm wrong. Allegations against him. And like Capcom clearly did not do their research on that. And that's what they said. So I mean, it's feasible that they just didn't look, but that's still careless. And it's something that, unlike Capcom redoing a vocal track for a song, it's kind of too late to just completely redo Rousey's performance. The game is out in a couple months. Like, it's too late.
So here's my thing, right? Like, one, this isn't a condemnation from me on Ed Boon, like, whatever. But I think that, right now a very small section of the internet is talking about these allegations against Ronda Rousey, but they have been around for a long time. Like, I shared something in our private DM earlier of this stories about allegations around Ronda Rousey being published by ESPN. Like, these are not niche things. Like the story about the Capcom lead singer. Like, I'm sure there's a website or a blog that talks about that, and maybe Capcom should have done harder research. I'm certain they should have, but like, these aren't niche publications talking about some really problematic things, and I am disappointed. I'm not going to.
That's fair.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Because, like you're saying, they're doing all these things to bolster inclusivity, and to not sexualize or fetishize different cultures, and then they also turn around and do something where, again, as Lucy said, and it's a connection I didn't make until she said it, but she's spot on, which is like something that has been considered toxically masculine before, and then they're like, oh, also, the person who's helping sell this game beat the shit out of someone.
It's also wild to me because Mortal Kombat is so popular. Like, they didn't. Yeah. It didn't need Ronda Rousey.
It doesn't fucking need it.
Mortal Kombat might be the biggest fighting game in the industry right now in terms of its popular mass market mindshare. It certainly does better than Street Fighter and Tekken in terms of broad gaming culture.
On IGN, Mortal Kombat kills. Like, it just absolutely kills. We know that if we've got a Mortal Kombat piece, it's going to do well because people go crazy for it. This is why I'm just like, why do this?
Well, so like on paper it makes sense, right? You got Sonya Blade, who's a character who's just an ass kick, and she doesn't take any shit from anybody.
Discord
right?
just censored everything you said.
Yeah, really? Repeat yourself, buddy.
It sounded like a gag out of a sitcom.
Gotcha.
Where
so Sonya Blade, so like when you look at Sonya Blade, like she could be played by Ronda Rousey in a film, right? She's tough, she's no nonsense, she kicks a lot of ass, she doesn't take any prisoners. And so, like, your mind probably, if you want somebody to portray that character in a game or in a film, you probably think of somebody like a Ronda Rousey. But I agree. Like, I think that this is a case of it just wasn't known.
Yeah.
You know, and it's really unfortunate. The stuff that it's not just the Sandy Hook stuff that bugs me, but we have a few friends of this show who are proud members of the trans community. And we support them 110%.
I've got a lot of very
so,
close friends and family who are trans, and I have to
Yeah,
wonder
yeah.
if I buy this game,
Mhm.
how much am I doing wrong by them? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I just, you know, look, I'm not calling for anybody to boycott the game or anything. You know, all I'm saying is that I'm with Derek, or I'm with Zach. I'm with everybody. Fucking, I'm disappointed. You know, I'm a little disappointed to see this. And
Well,
I
right.
wish.
You know what it strikes me as is like everybody likes to do this, but gamers, hashtag gamers seem to like to do this more than other people. Where it's like, here's this intellectual property that I love. Who would be my like all-time? This would be like my fan casting, right? Like I see this. I really like Gears of War, which is like a niche community, but like they always like to do fan castings, and it's like a fan would love to see Ronda Rousey in this role, but like a company who's again running a multi-million-dollar, super successful, super well-known thing that doesn't need a celebrity spokesperson, they should catch this shit, right?
Zach,
Like it's
come
not.
on, Zach. Are you really going to put the onus on a small company like Warner Brothers to have
Yeah.
the? I
Like,
mean,
Like-
but that's what kills me is that it is Warner Brothers. This is a
Yeah.
company that has both the resources and the capacity to check on that. So it's either they didn't do their due diligence or they did, and the pros and cons, like the cost benefit analysis, they didn't care.
Yeah, well, and it's frustrating, right? Because there's a ton of like really well-established kick-ass men and women in Hollywood cameo that don't have a problematic history.
yeah.
Like it's just
Well,
weird.
it's weird too because this is also very out of step. That type of thing is kind of out of step for Mortal Kombat anyway because they've been going for, you know, like I don't remember who voiced Sonya specifically in the last couple of games, but to give you an idea, in the last game we had people like Steve Bloom and Ashley Birch. We're talking about like voice actors repping these games, and like Steve Bloom is back as Sub-Zero. I definitely recognized his voice. You know, and like Raiden's voice actor, who I don't remember by name, is clearly the same person. So it seems weird that Sonya was recast, and also not to another working voice actress, but to a UFC fighter who's
like
not a particularly good
earlier,
actress.
Like you mentioned, it's just weird because Mortal Kombat, it's not a game that needs the crutch of stunt casting.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I find most of these AAA games could easily do away with stunt casting. But yeah, like you're right, and it is a thing in the voice acting community where you know they're so frustrated with celebrities just being shoved into these roles just because it's like a cool thing, like a name, like a Ronda Rousey trailer, or
oh shit, we got Ronda Rousey in Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
But it's like, again, it's just, you know, what value does a celebrity voice actor add to your game other than the fact that you have to pay them a shit ton of money more?
I just thought of what probably pushed them over the edge to choose her. Because since she is now part of the WWE, they promote every TV show, movie, and game that one of their wrestlers is in extremely heavy. So they are getting all of the wrestling promotion with it.
I hear you, but I feel like if you're a diehard wrestling fan, you probably already like. That sounds like a stereotype. And
no, I hear what you're saying. But
yeah.
I have several friends that are hardcore wrestling fans, and when I tell you that the stuff that the WWE chooses to promote gets to them more than any other network or advertising, it's a big deal. Like, I actually attribute a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy's success to WWE marketing Batista to them.
Batista was good.
So
do you think that maybe you go ahead, John?
Okay, I was just gonna say real quick, they didn't actually model Sonya Blade's character after Ronda Rousey this time, did they?
I don't know that facially she resembles Rousey much. No,
because in the opening trailer, there's a very clear scene of Sonya in the game, and she doesn't strike. Like, I don't believe she's modeled or mocap by Ronda. I think it's
mocap was what I was going to bring up. Do you think maybe Rousey was doing mocap for any of the female characters and like, oh, I want to voice somebody, and it was like,
I mean, it
oh,
makes
Sonya's
sense on
face.
paper. I mean, she's a
here's
martial
something.
artist.
Here's something that I know because I followed Injustice 2's ramp up to launch is actually for Injustice 2. In a kind of unique move, NetherRealm actually built and established their own motion capture studio specifically for their own titles, which means that in theory they're bringing a lot of the talent directly to them. Sometimes that's contract work where you contract a motion capture studio to kind of help you out in those productions. But NetherRealm is doing it all in house, so but that would also suggest that it's a creative choice or a financial choice to not have her likeness in the game. Yeah, I mean. It's a complicated thing, and I think that Lucy is spot on to say that like no game really needs a licensed person. I mean, I look at this generation's Quantum Break, which is a game I think I like more than most, and even then I don't like it all that much. But I mean, that game had a really big cast, and like I think it would have been just as good or just as bad without it.
So
it would have been just as bad for much cheaper without it.
Yeah,
is what I'll say.
But I love Remedy, so let's not be mean.
I love Remedy. I'm just not that particular.
Let's Remedy.
Yeah. So
let's Remedy. Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of mistakes being made,
this podcast? No, sorry.
Well, yeah. Well, this whole podcast is like not this particular episode, but this podcast is generally.
You guys need to stop being so self-deprecating. You've all had amazing.
That's what I'm saying.
It's part of our brand.
We have this nice, relaxed atmosphere. We chill. We have some drinks. We talk about topics in a professional but laid-back manner. We don't engage in fanboyism.
Laid back, yes.
John humble bragged in the first 8 minutes. I don't know about professional.
We engage in so much less fanboy nonsense than a lot of other shows that I listened to before I joined. Like, John, we really do have some standards on our discussions.
John, you sound like you're taking us to a new topic, buddy.
I'm going to shift the focus just a little bit, because while we're on the topic of mistakes, I do want to talk about a mistake that I feel was made, with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the DLC, a game, full disclosure, that I have not played yet, but I know a lot of people who have, and I know a lot of people who loved it, and I know a lot of people who had some problems with what I'm about to discuss. Finn 100% of the damn game. Like he did everything there was to do in this game, and it's a big ass game.
When I tell you that what we're about to talk about came out of nowhere and felt very tone deaf, I have some thoughts.
Go ahead because go.
Okay,
go.
So no, it's fine.
I'm pouring more wine.
No, please, no.
She's gonna need more wine for this topic.
The Dread Pirate Wesley would say, "Good, then pour the wine." So in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I think one of the really cool things about that game was the ability to shape your character's sexual preferences the way you wanted, right? Like it was even more so than Mass Effect, I think. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, from everything I've heard, gave you the power to really not just role play a character, but really, like, if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, really throw everything about you into that character. If you wanted to role play if you could role play anything you want, if you wanted to role play somebody who was in a same-sex relationship, then you could do that in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It gave you the option to do that, and I don't think any other game has approached that topic with that much freedom before, which is great. It's amazing, and it's something that the industry has needed for many years.
Well,
the thing that people are Go ahead, please, Zach.
No. Just the one thing that I really want to praise Odyssey on before I dunk on it is that one of the things that I really appreciated about it is I found, especially in the last decade, but it's getting better, is that when we would feature a gay or bisexual character that was player romance possible, it would often be one or two characters, which I think is limiting and disappointing, and it basically says, like, I hope you like this one character type for your character that you would want to be compatible with. But like Odyssey did this really cool thing where, like, no, like there's a ton of different personality types, and whoever it is, regardless of the sexuality of your character, whatever, like they're romanceable and they all have different personalities, and like it just felt so much stronger.
Well, and that's actually something that Dragon Age Inquisition did, is they said, there's one exclusively gay character game, like that you can only romance. There's only one person in this game that you can engage in a same-sex relationship with. That's it.
But no, you're right, because it depended on whether you're playing as a guy or a girl.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you're, I think it was a mage.
It was Darian and Sarah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
The
right.
archer and the mage.
Which is a step, but it's not like the huge leap that Assassin's Creed Odyssey took, and that was great. And that was really refreshing to hear. The problem in that is that in the new Assassin's Creed DLC, and by the way, I'm going to criticize the game here. It doesn't take away from any of the great stuff that the game did. It's just a mistake. But what they did was the DLC for the game forces you into a relationship with the opposite sex for the purpose of having a child. And so it basically takes, for example, if you're a guy and you have built and you have played as an exclusively gay character, then the DLC, it essentially forces you into a heterosexual relationship. A child is produced, and there was a big uproar about this. And there's been a lot of discussion about it, and I wanted to kind of bring the discussion here to SDGC because Lucy, please go ahead.
No, it's just it's an insane decision. I don't understand how this sort of slipped through the cracks.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Because it's just like there was so much player choice, there was so much freedom, and it was celebrated as a game that could be played by anyone of any, I mean, I'm gay. Like, I have played plenty of games where it's just like a single sexual orientation. So that's not what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it was celebrated because it gave us so much choice.
Yes, right.
And I don't quite understand how Ubisoft ignored. I mean, everyone was singing the praises of this game for that very reason, and I don't understand how it completely ignored.
Yeah.
I mean, John, have you got the statement ready?
Actually, I do. So because I just like to have statements.
It was made worse because while he pulls that up, in all the marketing and lead up to the game, they specifically mentioned as a point of pride that at no point in this game will you be forced to have a relationship. Like, they said as a check mark on the game's marketing that you can choose to play your character in whatever sexuality you want.
Right.
And then this DLC undoes all of that, and they just seem
counter to their own words that they put out.
Exactly. It's almost made worse by the fact that everything before this DLC dropped was, no, you play your character as you. Your Cassandra, your Alexios is your character. And then they end this. And the worst part is they give you options in the DLC to turn him or her down. For me, it's him, because I play as Cassandra. So you can rebuke the advances the entire DLC, and then it ends with the choice being removed from you.
So I've actually got the statement here. This is from the boards. So Jonathan Dumont, who is I believe he's the creative director for the game. He went on the Assassin's Creed forums and posted the following message, and I'll quote it here. He says, reading through player responses of our new DLC for Legacy, The First Blade Shadow Heritage, we want to extend an apology to players disappointed by a relationship your character partakes in. The intention of this story was to explain how your character's bloodline has a lasting impact on the assassins. But looking through your responses, it is clear we missed the mark. Alexios or Cassandra, realizing their own mortality and the sacrifice Leonidas and Mirren made before them to keep their legacy alive, felt the desire and duty to preserve their important lineage. Our goal was to let players choose between a utilitarian view of ensuring your bloodline lived on or forming a romantic relationship. We attempted to distinguish between the two, but could have done this more carefully, as we were walking a narrow line between roleplay choices and story, and the clarity and motivation for this decision was poorly executed. As you continue the adventure in the next episode, Bloodline, please know that you will not have to engage in a lasting romantic relationship if you do not want to. We have read your responses online and taken them to heart. This has been a learning experience for us. Understanding how attached you feel to your Cassandra and your Alexios is humbling, and knowing that we let you down is not something we take lightly. We'll work to do better and make sure the element of player choice in Assassin's Creed Odyssey carries through to our DLC content, so you can stay true to the character you've embodied throughout. That is
I would say that is a perfect response.
Yeah, that's great.
I would say that it's such a great response. It shows that they have kind of been humbled by the fact that, I mean, I don't understand why they didn't know this. why they didn't get it beforehand, but like it is a very good response.
It's the best response for a really bad situation that there's no great response for.
And like,
because even the good response is still, if you're a lesbian, then your character still has to spread their legs and think of the future, and it's just not romantic. Like, okay, but that's still a little fucked.
We've all been there.
Finn, go ahead. Finn, why are you raising your hand? Just interrupt. This isn't interrupting.
No, I don't like doing that. The other thing that I want to give them credit for is another. They didn't mention it in that, but they mentioned it later that they will be patching the trophy name.
Yeah, the trophy name was fucked.
That was another point of contention.
It was called
Growing Up.
Oh,
which is what a lot of people took offense to that because they're told that when you grow up, you'll realize you want kids and you want a family. You'll grow out of this,
or you'll do it for the future.
Like your little dalliance with same-sex relationships.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh my god, that's awful.
I did like that they're also changing that because the name of the trophy was right up there as part of why it was so egregious. Of a thing that they did. So the fact that they're also changing that is a good sign.
Well, and it's prompt, right? Like I think that's the other good thing, right?
Yes,
like they didn't wait. Like they said, okay, we fucked up, we made a mistake. I don't think, and again, like I want to stress, like just like I don't think Ed Boon did anything intentionally bad by bringing Ronda Rousey in. I don't think this was an intentional decision, but I just don't think they were thinking. Like
it wasn't malicious; it was just thoughtless.
But again, like I'm with Lucy, and like I understand that Assassin's Creed Odyssey, again, haven't played it, but I have heard nothing but great things about the game itself. But I heard more praise about this particular aspect of the game than I have any other aspect of the game. And so to screw it up like this, just like I'm wondering how that happened. Like
Cassandra is definitely up there as one of the best Assassin's Creed characters. Like Alexios, he exists, sure. Yeah, Cassandra's the star of the show.
Well, and I have to wonder about how development timelines for things like DLC work, and I won't pretend that I understand the structure and the studios that are contractually helping Ubisoft's flagship with making this game. But to me, it feels like when you hear about things like Destiny having support studios from Activision when they were still partnered with Activision, it almost strikes me as like this DLC was made by a support studio that maybe didn't have the same. This is purely speculative. But didn't maybe have the same design philosophy as the mainline studio, because like I mean, remember this is a hefty bit of content coming out 3 months after the original game's launch, and like the mainline studio probably wasn't making this at the same time they were making the bulk of the game. So I mean that's not an excuse, and it's purely speculative. But like y'all have been saying, it's shocking because the core of Odyssey was so different and such a positive departure from some of like the more linear aspects of the game that we've seen for the last 10 years. I'm just fucking disappointed. I mean, like, you know, it sounds like they're gonna make better by it, and it sounds like they learned something, but in the meantime, I'm fucking disappointed.
I think this is more of a bump in the road for the game. Like it's a big bump. Like it's a big bump, but I don't think that it. You know, I don't think that it just like erases all the good decisions the game made.
No, of course it doesn't, and that's not how any of this works. You know, I think that people should, including companies and studios, should be allowed the space to screw up. I mean, it does happen. But when this game has honestly just been such a force for good for so many people. It's a shame, but like I'm very ready to kind of just like move forward from it.
Well, and it's interesting because I have friends who are members of the LGBT community and who are gamers, and we've had discussions about stuff like this. And this is such an important game to a lot of people because it is really the first. Yeah, like Derek, like it's and it is such a. I guess I'll use the term watershed moment for games. I think I consider it to be one of the most important games of this generation, simply because we haven't seen something like this. You know, like and it goes. I think this and The Last of Us 2, where you've got you know, Ellie, who is a gay character who is front and center. She's no shit the heroine of the game. She's in a same-sex relationship, and I feel like I feel like it's finally happening. You know, like
Indie,
we are finally getting the normalization that it deserves.
We're getting there.
And
Indie has been waiting for AAA to catch up, and AAA is getting there.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Listen,
unless y'all have wait, do you have one more thing, John? Before
I was gonna say I think we've exhausted all our topics tonight, Zach. Have we?
I was gonna ask, and this is just to kind of lift the mood before we go. We can sign off, but I kind of wanted to know, excluding the EA negativity around it currently, if you could see a Star Wars type of game, whether that's a genre or an era or even a development studio, take on the Star Wars license, what would you want to see? If anybody has anything.
Project Ace's take on Rogue Squadron. Let's go.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm all over it.
Yeah,
Fucking awesome.
I wouldn't have actually thought about Project Aces before recently, but like, cause I've just, Rogue Squadron needs to come back in general, but getting prepared for the review for Ace Combat 7, like, it's got me thinking, like, it's a talented team and it's a really solid model, and like, I believe these guys could make a really good space dog fighting game.
That's fucking outstanding.
But I mean, just even in that vein, just give me more Rogue Squadron, please. I want it.
Lucy, what about you? That's an interesting question.
Oh, everyone's gone silent.
Oh, no, I'm here.
We paused for you. Do you have anything?
Oh.
It's okay.
There was a slowdown. No, I mean, to be completely honest, like I not to be a bummer, because I love the idea of pie in the sky stuff, but like for me, like Amy Hennig's idea, the an Uncharted style Star Wars story was kind of the best I could hope for.
Yeah.
Because again, linear storytelling suits Star Wars really well.
Yeah.
And again, it's working within constraints so beautifully. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm a little sad that never happened, but I guess like I still have hopes that is what I will eventually see.
Yeah.
So I will agree with Lucy, but I'll add to it. I do want. I mean, Amy Hennig is responsible for some of my greatest stories, like some of my favorite gaming narratives of all time, like Uncharted 1 through 3 are probably some of my 3 favorite games of all time. And so I would love to see her bring her storytelling style to Star Wars finally, or just do another game, because she's such a talented woman and she deserves to have a game published. But if I could see, like, if we're talking like pie in the sky dream scenario, I gotta say it would be really badass to see a studio like Platinum make just a badass lightsaber wielding fucking, I'm a Jedi, just slicing everything up. Like, oh my god,
you just want Platinum to make every game in every genre.
I just like, dude, Platinum would make such a fucking badass, like, just
insert you're right. Platinum would make. I mean, not that it would ever happen. It will never happen. That license will never go to.
Yeah.
No. I mean, Lucy, I've been screaming for years. Please give Castlevania to Miyazaki. Please give Castlevania to Miyazaki. But that's never gonna happen. But
that would be so much fun.
Oh my god, Castlevania Miyazaki. I can't even go down the Castlevania Miyazaki route because I won't stop. Finn, what about you?
Star Wars Bounty Hunter game by Arcane Studios. In the vein of Dishonored. Basically, remember what Prey 2 was supposed to be?
Yeah.
It's kind of not open world, but just open-ish world.
With a lot of different... Quiet Man.
No, I like it.
Like basically think Dishonored, but with Star Wars Bounty Hunters.
You want an immersive sim for bounty hunting.
I do. And I think that would be awesome. And also because, like Lucy said, you just want a nice, tightly structured narrative.
Yeah.
And without that, maybe just please bring back 1313.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Man, that game looked so good for the brief 30-second footage we saw before it was canceled.
I just want to, Finn, give a quick shout out to our fellow podcast member, Justin. Justin just entered the chat, and he said somebody said Justin's busting in, and I said that's actually his Smash intro. When Justin becomes a Smash character, it's gonna be Justin busting in. Zach, what about you?
I don't know who would make it. I really, really, really fell hard for the Red Strings Club last year and that style of game. And I would really like to see a Star Wars game that handles the ins and outs of intimate relationships within that universe that doesn't ultimately revolve around conflict.
Interesting.
I think that, and don't get me wrong, I love the fighting shit that happens in Star Wars. It's really interesting, but like there's been so much small scale relationships that haven't been explored, and there's so much world there that I just want to see a story about like 6 people, and just I don't know, I just want to see like friend dynamics.
Yeah.
And like I guess I don't know if that makes for a compelling fucking video game.
But
You know,
it makes
some
for a
good
great
boys.
podcast. You get
Zach.
friend dynamics every Thursday night, Zach. What's
Zach,
going
that
on?
just inspired me. You remember that indie game, that indie bartender simulation, Valhalla?
Valhalla, the best indie game ever made.
Yes,
No.
but you do that, but in like a Mos Eisley tavern, and you are a space bartender, and you just are hearing all the escapades.
As
of the
long as it's
cos-
every bit as gay as Valhalla was, then I want it.
There is zero chance it wouldn't be.
All right, guys, like Leisure Suit Larry, but Star Wars
Nope.
Cantina. Let's
No,
go.
that's
No.
not it. That's not it. Podcast is canceled.
I'm off.
That's not it.
Derek, please, let's hear it. Put your
I'm back.
headphones back on.
I'm back.
Let's hear it.
He said Ace Combat.
Derek,
I'm
it's your
He said
turn.
Ace Combat.
Oh, he already
Hey,
did it.
hey, I said Rogue
Maybe
Squadron.
I have had too much bourbon tonight. It's entirely possible that I've already had way too much bourbon.
Yeah.
Has everybody dropped their Star Wars takes?
They have. John,
Yeah.
before you take us home, Lucy, where can people find you?
Yes.
You can find me at Luce O'Brien on both Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Oh, it was
seriously-
such a pleasure. Like anytime, I'd love to like join again.
Oh,
That sounds awesome.
We'll
that
probably
makes my
take
day.
you up on
That's
That
That's
is such a rare thing to hear from a guest.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
It
true.
is
Thank you.
not.
It's
We have
usually
guests
like-
we have guests who want to come back. Some
Of
them
course
do.
you do. This is a
Some
great
of them.
podcast.
Some of them do. Thank you so much, Lucy. Coming from you, that means so much. Thank you so much for saying that. That just made my week. Just do a little housekeeping real quick. We got some more big guests coming up. Jeff Grubb from GamesBeat will be joining us next week. And guys, by the way, just so you know, Tom Johnson is going to be on that podcast as well.
Oh, no.
Oh,
It's going to
no.
be fucking lit. It's going to be.
Oh,
lit
it's gonna be a really good dumpster fire then
It's gonna
with
be
a lot
good.
of us.
In the coming weeks, we also have Steve Spahn returning to SDGC as well.
He is a
Um,
legend. He is
he
such
is
a legend.
fucking
Such
awesome.
I'm
a
really
legend.
looking forward
One
to
of
it.
the
I've
best
admired him
dudes
for
in the
so
industry.
long.
Yeah.
We've had him on before, and he is just an absolute joy to have on. So Steve is going to be on as well. Yeah, I know. Justin in chat says, "Oh no, Tom and Jeff, it's going to be so great." And we got some more guests coming up as well that I still can't quite talk about, but I'm very excited to break the news to you guys
Tease.
very soon. All the guys know the some of the guests I'm referring to. I'm very, very excited. We're just waiting on confirmation dates, and then I will break them to you. But it's going to be pretty awesome, guys. I'm very excited to talk about that. And we've also got something very special coming up next week. Zach, how much can we say?
No,
Well-
you can talk about what we're doing. We will have content covering Resident Evil and also Ace. In the
Yeah.
coming
So
days.
we will have a embargo day for Resident Evil 2.
and Ace Combat.
and Ace Combat 7 as well.
Yeah, I've got Ace Combat. We've got some preview stuff, like a first impressions thing going up tomorrow. Once the embargo is up. I'm also working on the written review. Will not be done for tomorrow, but it will be.
Can I talk about my
Done.
Kingdom Hearts coverage?
real quick. Yeah, go ahead, please.
No,
That's
just
coming soon.
we'll be tackling Kingdom Hearts from the perspective of someone who has not touched the franchise since Kingdom Hearts 2.
Oh,
We're gonna
fucking
I'm
lost.
into that. I'm the same.
We are going to tackle it to see if it'll cater
If you
to
can really go
casual
just from 2 to
fans.
3.
Yeah, can you just treat it as a trilogy, or do you have to consume 13 years of supplemental material?
Spoiler: you do have to consume.
Spoiler, you do.
probably.
But
Absolutely fucking.
it'll
do.
be amazing to try and cover this game and parse it without knowing who any of these non-Disney or Final Fantasy people are.
And Finn, that sounds fucking awesome. I'm looking forward to that. And I also do want to point out that Zach and I are doing a co-review of Resident Evil 2.
Yes.
So
From the position of John, who really likes Resident Evil, and me, Resident Evil game.
Yeah, this
So
is,
we're gonna the
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 DM
new
back
and the
and forth-
old. New and old is what we're going for, right, John?
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, yeah, new and old. You got it. Oh, so like, hold on. Are you saying that I'm old and busted and you're the new hotness? Like, is that where we're going with this? Like,
It's
is that
not what
you're
he's
doing?
not
No.
saying.
It's
Is this like a Tommy Lee
Oh,
Jones, Will Smith scenario? Like,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, okay, that's
Oh,
fine.
does that mean
I'll remember
Zach
that.
gets to just randomly scream out, "Oh hell nah"?
No, yeah, he does that to me anyway.
John,
So
We have two
please,
more
let me
pieces
go to bed.
it's
of light content coming up.
Okay, all right.
On Saturday,
Lucy's
we
like,
have-
"Oh my god, get me off of
I
this
know.
podcast."
On Saturday, we have our next Final Fantasy retrospective. It's Final
Yes, we
Fantasy VIII. It was me, John, Finn, and we had Tom Johnson and Natalie Flores on, and it was a really good discussion. And then tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time, John and I are going to play more Resident Evil 5, which was a ridiculous time last time because John had to corral me as a very deadly toddler.
I'm gonna put a fucking bell on you.
In kind of a run-up to Resident Evil 2 coming out, Resident Evil 5 is one of the most maligned in the series. We had to go back to it, and it turns out it's a great time when you have a former Marine and a very deadly toddler. So...
It's such a fucking
You know.
disaster playing Resident Evil with you. It's terrible. But it's also good. It's good but terrible at the same time.
It's a comedy
All right,
routine.
everybody. That's all we got for right now. Forward to all the content we got coming next week. Like we said, Ace Combat 7, Resident Evil 2 review dropping. It's going to be a good time. And as always, it's not always poetry, and we don't always agree, but we always keep it real. So until next time, please take care of each other. Be good to each other. We'll see you next week.